Hello, guys.
How do you record this?
Hello, everybody. Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to see you guys here. Thanks for joining. It's a great pleasure. It's the third meetup we're doing. The previous two ones were mostly focused on building digital twins and knowledge graphs for digital twins. And in this session today on this meetup, we're going to discuss mostly about the data scraping, which is one technique where we can take data from services without using the API. It's a very interesting case, very close to the purpose of building knowledge graphs, because knowledge graphs need data and training resources. And this is what we are going to analyze, how we can use MCP tools. We explain what this is in a little bit. To scrape data from services, we couldn't do it automatically, and feed them in the database we want to use for our own project. And I want to welcome also my very good friend Radek from State Chains, who joined the conversation today. I'm very glad he's joining us today, this conversation. A few things for Ray. He's the founder of State Change, an incredible community about technology, AI, and for those who know Xano, you can find a lot of things about the Xano software, low-code, no-code platform building databases. Ray, do you want to say more about you?
Yeah, well, just first of all, I'm very grateful for being invited today. And then, yeah, I mean, my background is actually as a CTO and software company founder over the course of the last, oh goodness, over 20 years now. Sort of, discovered the low code stuff about 5 years ago. Built State Change for us. We're focusing on the harder parts of that, because the idea that like lots of business people come in and we're trying to solve significant problems, and like there's this so close to getting to the end, and then that last 5% is sort of where we're sort of taking office hours mode. And then from those office hours, I built a number of mental models and built resources to help people crack that more quickly. And now sort of taking that into the world of AI assisted development, and we'll talk about this more, about like also AI assisted just technical work, right? Like the things we thought, oh, we need to go build out this whole piece of software. We can just do things now, and that's really one of the amazing things about about this tech that we'll turn into and court the art.
Also, it's very interesting. I'm a member of State Change the last 1 year, and I see how valuable these conversations are, and the work we do every single week, the things we find, and the new trainings. It's awesome. I think we can start, right? Right?
Sure.
And while we will talk, guys, feel free to turn on your microphones and join the conversation. It's brilliant to have a conversation, not just a presentation. We don't have a slideshow. We will just run through a workflow and real cases. I'm starting with a real case study that came to me. I have a story about that. It was back in almost 7 years ago, when I was requested from a music promotion company to somehow access the data into the Spotify for artists. Though Spotify is a different platform for artists and for listeners. All right, and the data were about the performance and the number of streams by a specific playlist. This information is not available onto the API from Spotify, so we couldn't build an automation performing the API calls and have the data back in our database. So back in that time, we tried to use multiple things about scraping and build a bot that can log in into the Spotify account for the artist. So we needed the artist credentials, which is critical point. We're going to discuss it. And then get into there, copy the data and save them into a database. The thing is that back in that time, while we spent 3 months into investigation and development, we didn't achieve it. And this is not something random. Spotify is a company that cares a lot about the data, and they really, really want to secure these data. That's why they don't make them public, or they do not have them visible into their API. But 7 years after, the technology has totally changed. We have tools, we have AI that can help us do the jobs that we couldn't do them that well. Okay, so I had the same request from another case study, and I had a conversation with Ray. Say, Ray, I had this request. How can we handle that in today's technology? And Ray gave a nice suggestion and idea. He said, why don't we use the Puppeteer MCP server? Puppeteer, for those who don't know, is a library for scraping, very well known from Python user developers. They use it a lot to build this kind of bots. With Puppeteer, what you can build is to create exactly the human experience in a headless browser. And the MCP is the Model Context Protocol. It's a protocol of communication with AI, with LLMs, where we can ask them to do a job by giving them free text, and they understand what API jobs they have to execute. They know it, they have the way. So Ray came to me and said, why don't you use Puppeteer MCP to do that? It was brilliant. So I created a song for myself using 11 Labs, uploaded as an artist onto Spotify. You can get into the Spotify and find it. It's a random running song, nothing special. And then I just needed access to the artist Spotify, so I can have a real example how to guide my Claude to do that. And we can run, of course, the case study live to you to show you exactly how it works. So let me share my screen. I'm using Claude, by the way. So, and for that case, if we want to run an MCP server, we need the Claude desktop. Okay, this is important. Here is a new conversation. And I have on my browser the link I have to get into for login. So before we get started, also let me mention here the tools I have here. We click and see all the MCP servers. I have the MCP server already, and he's active. So I will ask him, say, just a moment. Hey, using your MCP tools, please open that page. And now Claude understands that he has to use the Puppeteer MCP server to start into my laptop a headless browser. He asked me to do that. I will say hello once. And it is opened. Now let me share basically my entire screen so you can see that too. Just a moment. So I have Claude here, and here is a headless browser he open. Okay. Now I want him to click into the login button at the top. So he will start the login process to get into the account. And I will ask him, I want you to click on the log in at the top and right of the screen to log in to platform. And what this does, it takes screenshots to understand what's happening here. So the model can see where the login button is, what it has to do, and in order to select it, and he will go and do it like a person, and we will see this coming out update up front here. He gave it a try, he failed, but he tried another way to access it. It failed. No worries for these failures, because he finds his own way. Maybe sometimes our prompt wasn't that clear to guide him where he can find the place we want him to do the click. Once. You see, he clicked it. Perfect, man. Now please add the email. This is my email. Into the email field. And I'm doing this because I want to show you that he can. Now he asks me to take a screenshot here. I want to show you that he can fulfill fields. He understands that it's in Greek language because I have it in Greek into my browser, but that's fine. All right, here completed. And I expect to see here fulfilled my email. You see, it came. Now, there's no reason to spend more time into this process. It's quite easy. Let's save some time here. I will click the button to continue. But I want him to complete his message. Perfect. Now this sends me a verification code. I will copy and paste it into my testing. He was able to fulfill the boxes with the right code. And by the way, if we have the Gmail connection to Claude, we can ask Claude to access our Gmail, get the code, and fulfill it in here automatically. So this way can be automated while it is into it's not fully automated with the chat. Since it can do it, we see the opportunity to fully automate it afterwards. And here is what an artist on Spotify can see. Okay, I have no listeners. I had one stream, so someone just asked it, listen, my document. Here is my song. So I want him to click on the menu option, music, on the left sidebar menu. So I expect him to click into here. And so the purpose from this sample case study I had to work, and I worked very recently, was exactly that one. We needed to build a bot that can access this Spotify platform for artists and take the stream information. Where was the challenge for us? It was into the login. After fulfilling the code, and clicking the button continue, the browser, the headless browser, couldn't accept the click button from the bot. He didn't let us do it. However, this was just one click from us, and the rest of the thing, we had access into the entire platform. We could take everything we would like to have. So last question for him to show you guys that he can understand the stream information into this table. Into the table of releases and streams, I want you to tell me how many streams do you see? And here there are filters. I can ask him to click on those buttons or update the filters. He can do it. The challenge in scraping, it's not how to guide the bot inside the platform. The challenge is how you will log in. Oh, here we go. He found that we have one stream in total, which is perfect. He can see and understand it. And coming back on my thought, the challenge is how can we log in without understanding that we are a bot? Because these platforms like Spotify, they invest a lot in security. They take care of their data because these data are very, very important. And the second thing is when we automate this thing, how can we make it to look more like a human instead of a bot that can hit all of those pages very, very fast? Because this usually is an alarming for the security systems. So this is how we work on that. And that way we can take the data from services like this. So before we continue, I'd love to ask you guys for any questions. You may have any feedback so far, anything you want to discuss.
Hey, Dimitri, you're oh, sorry. Well, I was just going to ask. Oh, thank you. I was going to ask so you were showing it sort of Copilot viewpoint. Are you going to show like how to do this programmatically as well? Just because I'm thinking of the sense that that's awesome. Like you can show how through co-piloting, you could do the login, get it to an authenticated state with the bot and have access to information that you may want to use that you can't get just from public scraping, which is amazing. But if we wanted to do this programmatically, like have you had a case where, you know, you want to tell Claude to go in, log in, and then I need like from my favorites list, I need to get all the information or just new songs that I read. I just answer.
Oops, I'm muting the rest, guys. Sorry, because we had the voice from the background. No worries. PM, can you complete your question, please?
Yeah, so it's really just maybe you're going to answer it already, but is Dick, do you have programmatic use cases for this where you can essentially just have it all programmed for the headless browser to do what you did and maybe run on a periodic schedule?
This is a very interesting question, a very good point. To be honest, guys, I did not try to build it 100% automatically. My approach was to build an MVP version, testing the MCP workflow and see if we can guide the AI specifically into this platform and take the data we wanted to take. So as an MVP version, I was able to do it, and it was succeeded. Now, in order to do it automatically in a programmatic way, 100%, I did not try it, to be honest. But I think, Ray, can you answer the question if we can use the MCP server programmatically instead of the chat experience and ask him to complete. And if we can use the tools, can we handle the challenge of clicking the continue button? Because this was a point where I failed during my tests. So, yeah.
Awesome, because the use case that I'm thinking of is like, we'll use Spotify as the example, right? So say I'm managing different upcoming songs and just information that's only available within the authenticated area, and I want to have a method to see what's the logged in customer experience, but just to see the enriched data and be able to pull that and say, hey, is it accurate? Is it what I'm expecting? Or is there errors coming out? Is there a null value for a song title or things like that? Like I see this being valuable to have the automation with a logged in user to then routinely go and give feedback on quality of the service.
Mm-hmm. So the question, correct me if I'm wrong, the question is mostly of understanding the AI, where he has to go and find the information we are telling him to find, right?
Yeah, and also having it into a data structure where you could even have the AI evaluate under certain conditions, like, oh, check for any, I'll use simple, check for any spelling errors in song titles, or check for, if it's in authenticated space, maybe there's comments and things like that. Go and search through the comments and highlight anything that stands out based on whatever criteria you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Great. From my experience with the MCP Puppeteer server, I tried, he was able to understand exactly what I was telling him. I tried to tell him, go and click on these buttons, change the filters. I was able also to say, change the time range into the filters to make it yesterday. And he was able to understand what exactly option he had to select in the drop-down menu at the filters level. And then he was able to extract the information. In terms of the spelling things and all of this, he was able to understand the header of the table, because there is a table element into the HTML. And the way he achieves that actually is that before every single step, he takes a screenshot, which is important. So he see what we see also. So from my experience, I didn't fail on that. It was working very, very nice. But for the programmatic, the 100% programmatic way, Ray, would you mind to tell us your thoughts? I think we can hear you.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so for me, the one of the great things about using the MCP sort of and chat agent approach is you're figuring out what's the sequence of stuff you need to do, right? You're sort of doing that interactively and seeing how that goes. Then what you want to do is compile that into like a single prompt, right? Hey, here's the plan. Do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. And one of the magic tools you can use here is, with Demetrius having just gone through that set of experiences he can have the AI make that script based on what we just did, right? So it looks at his prior context and says, oh, well, let me summarize those steps. And then those steps become what you can then just feed right back into the AI to get it to do it again. Now, Claude Desktop and Claude AI is not the ideal environment for doing the repeatability part. It's actually a really good environment for doing experimentation. But there are other agents. I use some in particular, like for things like particular things you want to like work with desktop stuff, like if you're doing the Puppeteer thing, like what Deej was doing. I use Warp is a favorite of mine. Really easy to use. It combines being able to work at the terminal with being a chat agent. And if you want, I can share my screen and show a little bit of how I use that, and even doing that with some Playwright. Because that allows you to combine the idea of you can do the exploration interactively, and then compile that into a workflow that you can run just as a command whenever you want. And of course, once it's a command, it becomes something you can put on a schedule to run whenever you want. And that is something you can run on like your, on a Windows machine or a Mac machine or even a Linux machine. The question is like, how can you have something runs completely in the cloud? That's where things get a little bit more tricky, because a lot of this automation stuff for like controlling browsers is something that can be done through the cloud. Like there are services like browser-based to do this. And then you're sort of taking this level up, right? And going from like the prompt-based exploration, which is what Demetrius was talking about, to maybe prompt-based execution, an AI-centric script of, getting the AI to do the work agentically and use tools from MCP to get it done. And then as you get that, being able to say, okay, well, now I've got a pattern. Can I express this in code? And that's something that AI does really well, is write code for you. And so like browser-based has a framework called Stagehand, which you can use to articulate these are things I want it to do. Now, the tricky part with that is, as you get more and more removed from having the control of your individual machine or having the control of the individual you, it becomes harder to get the machine to do it right, because it's more likely that it's going to run into problems when we're sort of doing this sort of over-the-top scraping thing. So the further removed you are, the better off you are doing something that has APIs to it, right? Because that's a little bit more, a little more white box way of doing it. But when you're doing it the black box way, you want to sort of stage out to see how far you can extend and still get the reliability you're looking for. And also keeping in mind that's always going to be much slower, because you're waiting for the browser to go. And if you make your browser operate at hyperspeed, usually the server at the other side starts to notice that, starts to block you. And if your system's based on having to go fast, everything kind of, keels over. Does that make sense? Yeah. But I can show up a little bit of this. I would be nice. See here, is this right thing? Yeah. Okay, you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so first off, just by way of like what, how MCP works with these agents and these tools and whatever. This is Warp. It's a service. I think it's like it's not free. It's a paid service. It's like $18 a month or something, I think is what its primary price point is. I love it. And what it allows me to do is, I can just have the equivalent of working at a terminal, but I can also have it just do things for me, like tell me a funny joke and write that joke into a file in my documents folder called joke.md. And by having the ability to go back and forth between things that are sort of AI-ish and being able to do things directly in the computer, I say accept that. More joke.md. Okay, more joke.md. Make sure it knows that it's actually for the terminal. See, there it is. So the idea then is that it allows it to, and by allowing it to go back and forth, it starts to get towards your question, right? Of like having something that isn't just sort of floating out in the ether, but having something where you can actually save results locally on your machine, and that you can also then execute on. In fact, one of the things I really like about this particular system is that when you ask it to do something, its bias is to not try to do it for you, but to write code to do it for you, which makes the whole thing much more repeatable. Right? So like if it can write code to do it, it'll do it. Otherwise, if it has to do things directly through, let's say, MCP or whatever, it'll do that. And I can also tell it to do things like, I basically, gave it some instructions regarding going and talking to YouTube. That's this over here. Basically, this is being controlled by, this session of I'm using Playwright to control it. And then if I want to do, I can say, just write tell it to make a workflow based on what we've already been doing so far. Right?
Oh, so it'll do, so it creates like the script like for Playwright for you instead, and then you can use that to get whatever data you're looking for.
Yeah, actually make the script, and what I told to do is actually make the script for Warp to do it, so that Warp, so that it's being, so that it's telling the agent what to do, right? And then the agent, and among the things, it tells the agent to use Playwright to go do this job. And I'm not writing that code myself. I'm asking the AI to do it for me based on the sort of journey of discovery that we had gone on so far in the chats. Does that make sense? I appreciate it's a little bit of a bizarre idea.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's getting to that end result. Like if we wanted to, like the use case I'm just thinking of, because I'm trying to solution for it right now, is just getting that either logging in, maybe like, yeah, logging into YouTube or logging into an authenticated state, and then being able to pull data, or even like public facing, like just being able to on a regular basis pull information, and then also then have a second step of asking an agent to review the information. And I saw Chris in chat too was saying, hey, have you tried to instead for these tasks give the agent a goal? And maybe that's a question for you, Ray, and Dimitri.
That's a fair point. We can come back to the goal thing in a second. What I have found for something that's this complex and kind of hard for it to do, I have it sort of thinking about a few different topics. Basically this is like the meetings I've done in the course of the last, say, last couple of days, right? I do a lot of meetings per day. And I have it going over this private app that I've built, right, to go find the meetings that I've worked on, go look at all their transcripts, right, including things like office hours from state change and what have you. This is like an office hours example. And find key ideas in them, and then look across those ideas to summarize them. Right. So the idea is that, which is sort of getting to a couple of different points. The first is this is a private site. If you went to this URL, it would ask you to log in. And second, it will, the idea is for it to go and get information based on just looking at the site without having to, what am I trying to say here? Without having to have the user log in. So one of the neat things is that one of the great things about using the MCP approach, right? Your ordinary Puppeteer approach suffers from the problem of you need to tell Puppeteer what to do, and it hasn't logged you in, right? Everything's a new session, right? It's like a completely brainwashed baby. One of the neat things about using like Playwright, which has an MCP server, in fact, even has an extension, so you can run it in like one of your existing browsers, is that it can use the fact that you've logged in before, right? So that you can use your saved credentials to go do the work on your behalf, which I find to be pretty handy, because it can remember that state of the browser. And that helps with automation, because now we're asking the automation to do fewer things for us, right? Instead of figure out how to log in, you have confidence it can come in a logged in state. And if it doesn't come in the logged in state, you can just sort of tell the agent, hey, and by the way, if this looks like it's a login page, go ping me, because I got to go clean that up again. But for a lot of these things, as long as you log in once every day or two, it's fine. So if you have a process of running daily, it will sort of be able to keep on using the existing login. It re-updates the cookie as part of its usual process and sort of kicks the ball forward, which then makes the amount of work you need to do in terms of articulating the job to be done much, much simpler, right? And then you can be focusing your question, just like what you're saying, on the harder part of let's extract the data, and then let's do the work of processing it into meaning. And one way you can do that is by, you could just do that in the same agent. But the other thing I find to be much more helpful is to say that the job of this agent is to gather the data. And then I have agent number 2 that should run after that, which says there are going to be files in this particular directory. Go analyze them to do this job, etc. And then the way you set up that sequencing of agents is that's going to be different based on the system, on the the client you're using. I mean, this was using Claude, using Warp, using Goose, which is actually an open source one that is pretty good too. If I have it open somewhere here, bring it up. Goose is it's an open source one that's designed to that, your chat turns into what it calls recipes. Those are the workflows. And then you can add them to a scheduler so like they can run once a day and do that kind of thing for you. So it thinks about what you were describing as its concern, where it's trying to help you discover how to do the work and then execute on it. And the reason why we're not talking about why we're just writing like straight Puppeteer code to do it is because when we're dealing with like a third-party site, we're dealing like with potential changes in how those systems work, right? And so what we want to do is look at the site, figure out how to, what button to push. That's like the next button. Oh, wait, that's not actually doesn't have the same, UID on the screen or whatever. So it looks, acts, takes that next step, does it more slowly, but as a result, it does it more reliably. That make sense?
Absolutely. And you flagged a very, very critical point of this process. Because I had the pleasure to discuss it with the prospect we were talking about and do this MVP. It's about the scalability and the ability to keep it live in the same way for long term. When the design of the platform has changed, not only the UI part, but also the UX, where sometimes in the UX, we have hidden things. The page interacts totally differently. Then what we have built is broken. It doesn't work because the site has changed and we have to go and do it again and again, give the instructions and update our workflow. And that's very interesting approach. Ray, I have a question. The scraping tool you recommended, could you repeat the name of it, by the way, instead of the Puppeteer?
Oh yeah, sure. So the one I've been using is called it's called Playwright, which is by Microsoft. Okay, so it's like Puppeteer is like a lower level technology for running a headless Chromium instance. So Chromium is the engine that runs the Chrome browser. Same thing using like Dia, Brave, Microsoft Edge, etc. And like so, there's another flavor of it that is so-called headless. So that's Puppeteer version. And Playwright is a driver that sits on top of that. That is in that's from Microsoft. It has really good support from like a multi-trillion-dollar company, which is always nice. It also has an extension with it that is a little bit of work to install because one of those things you got to install is an unpacked extension. But when you install the extension in say Chrome, it means that it can talk to your existing Chrome browser instead of what Demetrius was doing, where it was like had its own, little window and browser that it was doing its work in, which is super cool because that way you can have something that already has like your extensions in there. So if you got like your 1Password or your LastPass or something, right, for dealing with credentials, you can just be logged in, right? And then it's sort of doing work as if it were something just sort of sitting down at your keyboard. You won't do that for all possible things, but like I find that to be a really convenient feature. And then there's another one, which is Chrome DevTools, which is distributed by Google, which is actually Chrome's first-party way of controlling Chromium browsers. And I actually have both of those set up as MCP servers in my work. And actually, if you'll forgive me, Demetrius, I'm going to share my screen one more time.
Sure.
I think that it might be helpful for people to see. See like in Warp itself, just as an example of like where these MCP servers are coming from, right? Because we've all used ChatGPT before. We've all used, Claude, maybe some of us have used Claude or what have you. But what you can do in say Claude or in ChatGPT is you can have these what they call connectors, which are MCP servers. They just live up in the cloud. And they'll work with other systems like Gmail and Notion and whatever that have a cloud-based service. But a lot of the really sort of more hacky and interesting ones, like browser automation stuff, that tends to run locally. There are a couple of browser automation ones that run in the cloud. Browserbase is one. But a lot of the ones that like give you this kind of, more tactile response, those run locally on your Windows machine or on your Mac machine. So if I were just to scroll down here, here's the Chrome DevTools one that I was talking about. And if I were to click on the pencil here, I can see what the configuration for it is. And this is all in JSON format. For those of you who haven't seen this before, it's it's super crazy in the way it looks. And the idea is that it's going to run a command called npx, which if you've installed the Node.js executable on your machine, and which will run an npm package called Chrome DevTools MCP. And all you need to do is run that, and it automatically spins up to control things. And then that array machine. And that's why my agent is running on my Mac to then be able to communicate with, and in this case, provide some degree of control over my my browser, over here. And there are some others. Like I've also got it talking to Neo4j. So like what I can do and have done is get data from the browser, download it, or have my agent download it, and have my agent turn around and upload it to a knowledge graph. Or like a PM's question, right? I could, go and check it for spelling, right? I could go send it off to, another agent to go do that. And then this is all setting me up to then, and if there's a problem, then I want you to go send a message to X, right? Through like, a Slack or what have you. And having multiple of these tools in here gives me the ability to say, I want to connect X to Y to Z. And so you can see here, this is the Chrome DevTools one. That's what I've been working on most recently. This is the Playwright one, which allows me, which uses the Microsoft tool I was talking about. And works kind of largely the same way. You can sort of see in the way that the thing is organized. But the idea is it's just the MCP server itself is just like running a particular protocol so that all these AI agents, the Goose, the Claude Desktop, the Warp, whatever you want to use, that they all know how to talk with it. And then they can just execute those controls through the get schema or list GDS procedures or click or close page or all this stuff. That's basically the tools in the tool belt that these MCP tool belts of stuff are exposing to the AI. So the AI can say, hey, I think based on what the user said, based on what I did from the keep on its own and figure out what to do on its own. So that's kind of what the MCPs are doing on the local side. That gives a huge amount of power. They're a little bit less scalable because, of course, they're running on a local machine. But that's sort of a trade-off, being able to do more power pretending to be a person versus the ones that are more scalable, working with APIs that tend to be the things that kind of work better in the cloud. But then those, but bringing those two things together, these I find, the Playwright and Chrome DevTools is sort of one layer above the Puppeteer stuff in terms of providing a higher degree of control so that you can be, either having the interactive experience we were just talking about, or just create a workflow that says, hey, go run this prompt, where the prompt is the game plan, right? Just a list of things to do. And I'm using Warp as my example here because Claude Code also does this really well, by the way, but it's less friendly because it's all in the terminal. I like this as sort of having a good balance between access to the machine and providing me with a greater degree of GUI-ness, so that I can just sort of articulate my intent and just let it rip.
That's very interesting. I have a question. Someone may count that as a $1 million question. Why should a company invest in doing this approach, in building this technology internally, not building Puppeteer, for example, from scratch, but using Puppeteer and the other services to scrape data? This is a question that we have to think about when we want to decide in moving forward with these tools and the investment in making progress with that, right? Now, guys, it depends how important are for you the data you want to access. And into the conversations during the past week, another sub question close to that one came to me was about how about if scraping is legal or illegal, right? I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot cover this question. But coming back to the business purpose, we have to focus on what is the value that we can take from the scraping of the data, how we can use them to make something useful for us and the business. I don't know if anybody in the room has a different approach, different thoughts, whatever you have met in the past. I would love to ask you for your personal experiences, because at the end, this is the most important thing, because if there is no business opportunity to go and build things, there's no reason to go and build them, right? So all these things are technically interesting, but actually not useful. What do you think, guys?
Right? Can you restate the question? Oh yeah, go. Actually, PM has a thought here. So let's
Perfect. PM?
Yeah, so I think of it from both sides. I think of it both as a website provider and somebody who's interested in doing scraping. So as a website provider, I would rather anybody who's interested in the data on my site to use channels that I can provide them. I'd rather them go through like an API, because depending on how I have my site set up, maybe there's a lot of requests and I have cloud computing costs for those requests. I don't necessarily want everyone in the world scraping the site that I'm running, because all of my costs go up, especially if I don't have the best caching in the world for my sites. But on the other side, I think I want to do this even for sites that are large scale, where I have maybe many people creating content for those sites, but I want to not have to have high costs, or maybe I can't moderate content, but I want to have a way on sites that I manage to automate moderation of content. This is where that use case comes in, because if I have an approach to do the scraping and I can do like content moderation, for instance, using these tools, I mean, that gives me a valuable tool that I might not even have today. Maybe I don't have the bandwidth for content moderation. It's like, I'm just small business, for instance, but I have a cool site that I like. This gives me that ability to do some moderation without having like the funds to pay for the large team of content moderators.
Yeah.
So I think at the end, I'm good. I'm cool with it when, I'm scraping sites that I control, or sites where, the terms they don't mind, like they don't have issues with scrapers. They don't even care about it.
Right, like something where you're already paying for your subscription, right? So like, but they just don't have an API, so you're trying to get more value from it. I actually find one of the really key things to making scraping work, or making this kind of sort of, gray box, black box approach work well, is you got to slow it down, right? Making it that's one of the reasons why scaling is such a tough thing for this approach. So the by making it a first principle, say just do it slow, and then you're more likely to do it right. It can be actually, even just sort of giving that instruction to the AI as a first thing in the workflow can be remarkable in terms of improving its reliability.
Yeah, Ray, I was actually going to ask you about that, for the speed, for the rate, especially since too you might have rate limiting on the site. Like what have you found to be successful for that rate, or do you have an example of controlling the request rate, either Dimitri or Ray?
Demetrius, if you don't mind,
Yeah, absolutely. I would just
quickly, because I will show it visually here. And this actually is an important idea down here in Playwright. I'm just going to start the Playwright tool because it includes browser wait for, in addition to another one for getting it to wait, which is really handy. So what I do, and this kind of gets like Chris's question from the chat about being goal oriented. So what I do is I say, be patient. Go slow. I don't even say things like, make sure you sleep for 2 seconds between each time. I don't need to be that directive. Because often the page itself is going to be relatively slow. Like for things that we're really looking at scraping, we're looking at things that are like, old enough and hoary enough that they don't have an they don't have an API to them. And that usually means that like the page isn't going to load that fast anyway. It also means that sometimes the page loads and then you tap your fingers and then like the rest of the page comes up, right? So so what I have found, and I have to say that some of my own apps kind of fall in that category. By telling it to be patient is like like those kinds of broad instructions are kind of magic for getting it to do it. And then the tools usually come with things like browser wait for or browser delay, because it knows it has that kind of challenge, right? Waiting for the page to load, waiting for, let's wait for another couple of seconds. And then, one of the neat things about using something like Warp, but this also kind of applies to Claude Code, but let's like, as you get to more advanced stuff that's outside the, the Claude desktop box, they use other tools, right? So you can mix it in. So for example, one thing that like Warp or Claude Code will do is it can just go run a command line script, go run a command, like sleep, right? So like, hey, so if the agent's being told it needs to not go too fast, then it can just, say, well, I guess I just did a thing. Maybe I need to go take a nap because that was part of your set of values that you gave me. And then by doing that, it really stays, it keeps from putting its foot on the gas and keeps itself from getting rate limited. Because what I found to be most challenging is getting it, like if it runs into a ditch, right? Because it got rate limited, now it's some sort of error state. Trying to get the AI to get out of that zone is much more tricky. So keeping it out of that zone and keeping it on the happy path is usually the preferable way to go. So the way I will do that is, to your point, like just telling it to go slow. So rather than saying like I have a thing where it only does one request every 3 seconds or anything so hard coded, I give it a value, go slow, which then it applies through these tools kind of in a manner that it thinks makes sense and it usually has pretty good judgment.
That's so cool. So it makes the decisions by itself based on the general guidance we give them. If we tell them, do it more humanly looking, you can figure it out the way of sleeping, right? Because from my failure experience back in 7 years ago, we tried to put a frequency of sleeping moments, but it was easy to understand that there is a frequency behind that. We had a random number generator doing some math. So sleep 2 seconds, and then sleep 3 seconds, and then sleep 5 seconds, and blah, 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 making a sequence of movements. But it was easy to figure it out that there is a bot right there, since it has to be repeat for many, many pages. And this now, it's so fascinating to me because it understands exactly how he has to sleep and do it like human.
So like we can make a workflow. I sort of was alluding to that before, just getting the AI to be doing that for you, or you can write it yourself. There's a little bit of like how to on that. But you can also tell it to go write code. And so like what I do is I do the experimentation part and then tell it, and then this gets to like, Chris's question about like, or Chris's example, like just sort of writing code to get to do things. You can, depending on how well structured it is, you can, start to get it to write software for you. And even I have found to be pretty clever and like just writing software along the way in order to solve problems as they come up. Was one of the reasons I love the discovery part, because the discovery part is teaching not only you how to do it, but also teaches the AI how to do it. And then you can use that same history just to feed right into like how to make this repeatable process.
And this is a very interesting approach on using AI to teach AI how we want him to run the job for us. So he is the history data from our conversations, right? And he follows the template we created from the previous conversation, which is so interesting because he knows the general approach. He doesn't know the personalized approach we want him to follow.
I'm not sure which browser I've got on. Oh yeah, and the stagehand thing that I'm alluding to here is from there's a service called BrowserBase that has its and it also has an MCP server, but this runs completely in the cloud. So if you're looking for something that's going to be more replicable and not have to be on your machine, it's and it's very AI aware. This is a pretty good service for bringing to the party. I don't find it as good for discovery because it's so headless. Right? So like for discovery, I like to see, hey, if I do this input, what output do I get? Right? I learn. Because the machine in general doesn't get smarter than I am. But if we're learning together, then we're in a position of, okay, we understand what the pieces are. Now let's execute. No, we can just save to standard output. Right. And then like, just creating something that's more composable or what have you. But like this sort of allows you to sort of stair step your way, right? Like first, you know how to do it directly on your, just doing it by hand. Then you can work with the AI to get the AI to be doing it through MCP tools. Then you can have an agent that's doing that basically is that playbook where again, it's just using those same MCP tools and its own computer vision, which gets to Chris Ang's point from before, to identify what to do next. Then above that, you can write some code or have the AI write some code for you. And then above that, you can be writing code that's a little more deterministic and running in the cloud for you. And then, rather than saying we have to do the last step first, which is kind of where we were before, right? In the world of like using Scraping Bee or what have you, we can sort of edge our way up and make use of the latest tools so that we can just learn how to do it more quickly. And I think the kind of thing where like people were afraid, well, are you going to, go around to a bunch of e-commerce stores and just sort of steal their prices or what have you? I mean, that kind of high scale, low value stuff, this doesn't do as good a job for. But for the things that really matter for people in their business, in a lot more businesses, like and where like the things you want it to do are not the same things as what someone else on this call needs it to do, because it's all about basically doing, there's a term for it, it's called robotic process automation, where you just are trying to get the machine to do work that previously you had to click through to do that you don't want to have to do anymore. This sort of is taking us on that path to decrease our cost by 10x, then by 100x. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to show the connection here between writing the code, and let's see, we can even take a look at the file. And this is the code that I wrote. Just using the stagehand framework, and you could use you could have it write Puppeteer code or whatever. But it's this is code that I didn't have to go write myself or teach it to go write, because the way I taught it was through this process we went through together of how to bind this stuff.
It's very interesting. All right, we are on time, guys. I would like to ask you if you have any questions to drop here and share your thoughts with the subject of data scraping and the use of MCP tools and AI. We're very glad to spend 1 or more 2 minutes on that. And of course, we can continue with into the conversation. And I'm going to send you a follow-up email with the video so you can access that and play that. Connection to Ray on LinkedIn, on his YouTube channel. He has incredible videos. I really enjoy the stuff and the way he explains the challenging things on AI. And we're gonna repeat it in 2 weeks from now in another subject.
Cool. Thank you so much, Demetrius. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.